Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Craig Spinks. We warmly welcome the family of Private Thomas Bruce Sullivan, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Katara South Public School. From Queensland, Collingwood Park State School. And from Tasmania, Sacred Heart School, Newtown. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Boys and girls, please sit. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Thomas Sullivan, who was killed while fighting in France in the First World War. Thomas Bruce Sullivan was born in 1898 and was the eldest son of 5 children of Thomas and Louisa Sullivan of Devonport in northern Tasmania. The Sullivan family moved to Warrnambool on the Victorian southwestern coast when Thomas was young, and his parents managed the National Hotel there. During his schooling, he participated in senior cadets as part of the compulsory military training scheme. He later worked as a clerk and then as a farmer in the Warrnambool area. Sullivan enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in Melbourne in July 1915. After a period of training at Broadmeadows Camp, he sailed for Egypt with a reinforcement group for the 24th Battalion. The Gallipoli campaign had ended by the time he had arrived, and the following months were spent training as the AIF underwent a major restructure in preparation for its departure for the Western Front. The 24th Battalion sailed for France in March 1916, but Thomas remained in Egypt for some time afterwards, owing to a bout of mumps and enteric fever, followed by a fractured foot which required his evacuation to England. After recovering, a medical board at No. 2 Command Depot at Weymouth found Thomas to be permanently unfit for general service, but fit for home service. But he was later reclassified by an Australian consulting surgeon who deemed him fit for general service, and he embarked for France soon after. Sullivan was spared the bit of fighting at Pozières and Mouquet Farm on the Somme, where the 24th Battalion had suffered heavy losses. He joined the battalion in Belgium, where it recuperated and was brought up to strength with fresh reinforcements, while holding a relatively quiet part of the line near Saint-Éloi. In November, the battalion returned to the Somme and took up positions between the villages of Fleur and Goerdecourt. In this part of the line, a combination of autumn rains and months of artillery bombardments turned the battlefield into a quagmire of thick, glutinous mud. These conditions were made all the worse in the following weeks when the troops endured the coldest winter in France for well over 40 years. Although little fighting took place in the winter, the Australian front line was pounded by German artillery most days. The 24th Battalion spent most of November rotating in and out of the line near Longueval, with the other battalions of the 6th Brigade, working as stretcher bearers, forming ration parties, clearing roads, and building light railways behind the lines when they were not holding frontline positions. After a day helping stretcher bearers carry the wounded to the nearest dressing station, Thomas was wounded in the head by fragments of a German shell that exploded nearby. He was carried to the 6th Field Ambulance dressing station, where he succumbed to his wounds later that night. Aged 19, he was buried at Thistle Dump Cemetery near Longueval. Thomas Sullivan is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. His is just one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Thomas Sullivan, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.